Toni Quest, and welcome back to Talk with TQ. I love doing this show because I get to interview the most interesting people from all around. Today is very special to me because I'm interviewing a very talented sculptor. His name is Robert Spinazzola, and he's actually showing his work in a few different places. Currently, he's showing his work at the Evolution Gallery, and we're actually shooting from the Evolution Gallery today. And I'm really happy to have Rob on the show. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, Toni.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, your work is amazing.
Thank you.
I know you've heard this before. And you are a metal sculptor, and you tend to have a bit of a specialty.
Yes, I work with steel that is reclaimed and steel that I've mostly found and reformed into animal forms, generally probably mostly about Detroit, my hometown.
Okay. Interesting that you're from Detroit. Because I was reading your bio a little bit, and I said, it's interesting that you're a metal sculptor from like a city that was originally, I don't know what it is now, well, it's Motown, that's one. Yeah. But it's also like, what do they call it, the Motor City?
The Motor City, yes.
And a lot of cars are, I don't know if they still are, manufactured in Detroit, and somehow the metal found you.
Exactly. As a kid, I saw a million cars on the streets, cars from the 50s, cars from the 40s, cars from the 60s, and seeing those shapes and forms had a great effect on me and affected my work. And all my work goes through my upbringing in Detroit.
Okay, so tell me something about that, because Detroit, when you're from New York, you think of course, like the car manufacturers, and you think about the home of Motown music. Mm-hmm. You know, Motown, which really means Motortown. I don't think everybody knows that, but I know that. And so it's interesting. That's where your roots are from.
Yeah, I'm a kid from the east side of Detroit.
Okay.
And as I said before, growing up in Detroit, I saw a million cars, and cars are part of my family. I've got two brothers who work. One works for Chevrolet, one works for Chrysler.
Okay.
An uncle worked for Packard. It's a car company. It's long gone. Packard. And when I went to art school, I was going to be, I got my degree in art history. Mm-hmm. But I slowly decided as I was getting my degree that I wanted to start making the art as opposed to going into academia.
Right.
And that just led me to making my first sculptures out of parts of motorcycle parts that I bolted together.
Okay.
And that led on to welding them together and learning the process. And then more and more things I developed a skill that you see here.
Yeah, it's hard to deny. You know, I think that, I have to sort of throw back on what we were talking about before the show, that you actually let your art, your like vocation find you, as opposed to scrambling and looking for what you're supposed to do for yourself. But it was right there, and you did not ignore it.
It took a few years. When I came to New York, I was already a sculptor, but it took about 4 or 5 years to really develop this style of what I do. Mm-hmm. And these horses, I have done a lot of horses through the 80s and into the 90s. Mm-hmm. These are, of course, brand new within the last few years.
Yeah.
But it's about horsepower. And that's about Detroit.
Right.
The horse is just a symbol of the power of that. So
it goes a lot deeper than what you actually just see. Now, recently, I saw that you received an award for your work in New Hampshire in 2017. Yes. That's pretty recent. And how did that come about? That seemed like quite an honor to be on that particular list.
Yes. There were about 10 artists that were accepted into the Meredith Sculpture Walk.
Okay.
And one piece I had is this, I call it the double rabbit.
Yeah.
And the lower section is the Chinese symbol of rabbit in 3 dimensions, like a calligraphic piece. Mm-hmm. And on top, I made a 3-dimensional leaping rabbit that jumps over the piece itself.
Wow.
Is jumping over the piece head.
That's interesting. That sounds like it sounds very expressive. Yes. So what does Meredith do? Like, what is this Meredith sculpture stroll about?
Well, they, as I said before, they pick 10 artists or 12 artists, and then they give you a spot.
Yeah.
They ask you where you like to be, and mine was placed in front of the library.
Okay.
Because it was a Chinese symbol of rabbit. That they liked that idea. The librarians liked that.
Yeah.
And that was my spot. It was there for a year.
Okay.
From 2017 until the spring of 2018.
That's very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I know you've won other awards, prior to that as well. Now, currently, you're showing your work at in Katona. Am I right? Or Bedford?
It is Katona.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I got right.
Yes.
Okay. So it's an outdoor exhibition. Tell the audience a little bit about what you're showing there.
Well, I have 9 large-scale sculptures. Most of those are about Detroit. I have a over life-size dog facing the back of a truck, which is sort of the symbol of wolf at the door kind of idea. I have a 9-foot leaping tiger. Wow. Tiger goes back to in my baseball likes Detroit Tigers.
Oh, okay. All right. I get it.
I have several birds. One is a 7-foot tall, kind of large bird with a house as its head.
Okay.
I use the house form. I have used the house form in the last 10 years as in part of what I do. The home, the set being the center, and I also use I have these tall birds called geeks, which are sort of a parody. They are crow-like, but they have 5-foot-long legs and they can't fly, so they're sort of
that's a little geeky.
Yeah, a little geeky, and they're sort of funny, and they're on one foot and they kind of move. They'll move in the wind, or if you walk by them on a floor that's say not real stable, they will vibrate.
Okay.
And I use a little. Some of them are parodies. I bring a little humor into art. I think that art I relate to it that way, more than just saying I've created this and an object. I want the viewer to also to relate to it somehow, and sometimes humor is. Not all my pieces have humor, but some of them do.
It's always good to get a reaction from the viewer. You know, definitely, I would say, most definitely. Now, you work outdoors a lot, I imagine, on a lot of your sculptures, or do you have a studio that you work in? Like, where do you work?
A studio where I don't work outdoors, generally. If I work outdoors, I'm just cleaning the steel, and the process is I get a piece of rusty steel and clean off the rust, because you have to be able to join the metals together. You need to have clean metal on the two surfaces. So I sometimes do that outside, but then in the studio, I use different devices to hold the steel together.
So your process is both a creative process, but there's a real large tactile component to what you're doing. I just know it because I was showing you my sculpture, my ring, and I said, it's one piece of wire, and I know that it's not easy. I know that it's very challenging to manipulate metal.
Yes.
It is, and even a small little thing, there's a part of it that becomes, your body has to get into this.
Yes, it's usually a workout. At the end of the day, it is quite a workout. It can be quite a workout.
Yeah, satisfying?
Oh yeah, it's all satisfying.
Yeah.
It's nothing like it.
So you're in, and I want the audience to know that, you're somewhat, I guess, I don't want to say self-taught because you're so well schooled. The fact that you went into and got your master's degree, I think, in art history, or you went to graduate school for art history?
Yes, I have a not a master's. I have my first degree is art history, and then I went to graduate school for art history afterwards, which I left after the first year. Okay,
but did you find that studying historical figures in art had a profound effect on your work?
Yes, yes. In fact, one of my first commissions, I did my interpretation of a 6-foot head of Constantine out of motorcycle parts, which I welded together for Lewis Art Supply, which is on Woodward Avenue in Detroit.
Detroit. So we can't just run. Well, if you're in Detroit, you might be watching. There you go. Go ahead. Right? Wow, that's really something. So do you have an artist that you find, I mean, most artists, I shouldn't say most, I'll say that I know artists that are influenced definitely by artists who have passed on or by another artist. Is there anyone that you consider your work to emulate?
There are several influences in my work. I would say De Suvero, of course. He's the big one that works in the large scale steel. And there's several who I wouldn't say particularly figurative artists who work in steel, 18th and 19th century artists and painters.
Okay.
There's a lot of painters have been influencing my work too. Like
oh, really?
Delacroix, Jericho, the French Romantic type, that school.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more than just I try to look at everything as best I can to get inspiration for it. Some of the paintings of horses and other animals in some of these 18th century paintings are incredible, and it's just inspirational.
Right, exactly. You want to bring it to a 3D thing. It's interesting. I have a very profound respect for people who are versed in art history, and I know a few. And you're another one. There is another woman that's pretty local around here. She's an art historian, and talking to her, you can ask her questions about, the artists who have passed on, specific questions about their work or how they made a living when they weren't. How did they feed themselves? And it's funny, when you study art history, you learn more than what you think you're going to learn. I kind of wish I had done a little more of that, but do you find that was the right major for you?
It was. I came to it by kind of happenstance. I was in another major, and I left that, and I started taking art history courses. And once I started taking one, they sort of just dominoed, and I just was completely engrossed, and that's what I want to do. I thought at first I would be going to the art history field. Yeah. But then after a while, I thought, this is very cool. I'd like to try to do something in my own way that's kind of like I'd like to create art that would express how I felt, besides just the study of art.
Right, exactly. I think it's good to be influenced by other artists. I feel that it's a healthy thing, and I'm wondering how many other artists, let's say of your caliber, of any caliber, would consider going into art history in order to contribute to their work that they're doing in the here and now.
A lot of the artists I know look at other art, and read books about art. And, so there are a few who I've met who have an interest in the history that precedes us. Yeah.
I also saw that you have much of your work is in corporate collections.
Yes.
Tell my audience about that. I know a little bit about that, but you know firsthand.
Well, I'm in probably 5 collections. The biggest one that's the most well-known is the PepsiCo collection.
Oh, yeah, prestigious.
Thank you. And I have 3 pieces there. MCI, MCI still exists, they bought a piece.
Oh, wow.
GE, there's a piece in Washington, D.C. I gotta think another. The Gilbert Silverman collection in Detroit. He's a large collector of, he's not corporate, but he's a Fluxus artist collector. Yeah. Collects art. My work is not Fluxus, but he happens to be a big collector of that.
What is Fluxus?
It is, it's the art that sort of, as I view it, looks at the way we live and the society, and in a way reinterprets it in a kind of a comical way. It's kind of like Dada. Yeah. Yoko Ono was a Fluxus artist back in the mid-'60s.
difficult to understand sometimes.
It can be. It can be.
You know, you really have to be a deep thinker, I have a feeling.
Well, just by happenstance that I happened to be in his collection on a different, my sculptures in in front of one of his buildings in Detroit.
So you're really out there. So I know a lot of artists watch this show. I actually know a lot of artists who watch this show. And they would probably wonder, how did you get involved with corporate art?
Generally...
They found you?
No, generally they go through a gallery.
Okay.
They would come to Evelyn here at the Evolution Gallery, and I need a piece or I need several pieces for a new building, or we're going to have a campaign and we need, 5 or 6 paintings and 1 sculpture.
Okay. So I guess what I was thinking originally, I'm saying, boy, how does a metal sculptor actually... How is a metal sculptor created? And I started looking at paper clips. Is this how it happens? I don't think, maybe for some, you know?
Be.
But I think I just love the fact that you're from Detroit and you let your environment kind of shaped your career as an artist.
Yes, exactly. Well, I don't know that you know this, but before I was a sculptor, I was a photographer.
Okay.
And I did light drawings with a camera. Where I'd run up to a light at night with infrared film and make these shapes and draw. And I was thinking that sort of led me to these sculptures are sort of drawings in space in a way. They're different, of course, but that may have been how I got from one to the other in the beginning.
It's a fascinating process that you've gone through, I would say, most definitely. So what do you think is your next step? Like, you seem to have done so much. I mean, what more could you do?
Well, I have an idea of doing even larger scale work than I have now. I have a whole series about Detroit, which I completed the last piece about 2012 on the Detroit series.
Okay.
And I've thinking about doing large-scale freestanding sculptures for this area in Katona.
Oh, nice.
That's my next idea.
That would be a real lucky break for them. I think so. To find someone that just knows how to deliver it.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing, So your space where you're actually creating this work must be huge, because your work is huge.
Well, surprisingly, it's not. You would be surprised. You sort of modify things. I worked in factories.
Okay.
And you build things in sections.
Yeah.
My large-scale tiger, 9-foot tiger, was built in 3 parts. So you can build each part, and you assemble them. And even a tall sculpture can be built in a way that without a huge space.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be better to have, a 30-foot tall space, but that's not, that's...
You work with what you have.
Exactly.
Yes, that's really something. And so it's actually a piece-by-piece thing. I just, because in your mind, you imagine some sculptor out in the middle of a field doing all this stuff.
That could be, I've never done that. I've never had the opportunity to be in a space that is that large. You look at Storm King, you think of those sculptures out there.
Yes, I was just thinking about that.
That would be fun, but that would also be a different approach.
Yeah.
Which could be very cool.
Yeah, it could be. There's something about being in the elements that you either, in my opinion, either you love it or you definitely don't love it. Being out there, you're like a victim to the elements that are,
That's true.
But there's nothing really. I remember you'll appreciate this. I remember having a first date with my second husband at the Pepsi Sculptor Garden. That was our date.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it was the middle of winter, snow everywhere.
Wow.
And work looks good in the snow. It looks good.
It does. But,
Yeah. But you don't really want to be out there hammering if you don't have to.
That would be a little tough in that. I was thinking more of the summertime of working outside.
Yeah. Do you ever have an assistant? Do you have an assistant that works with you with all this big stuff? It's heavy.
I don't. I'm a one-man band. Everything I do myself.
Wow.
From start to finish, I get the metal. On occasion, I have help to move things because it's they get a little heavy.
A little bit, yes.
But other than that, it's just. I think for me, it's still part of it. It's the process of finding the metal, creating a new piece, and moving it there. Being involved in all those. In that whole direction, I find it kind of exciting.
So generally, you don't actually buy brand new metal to do your work. You find metal that's pre-owned metal?
Yes, pre-owned. Generally, some things you have to, on occasion, I have to buy new metal. If you're using a bolt to hold, for instance, once again, go back to the Tiger. The Tiger is being held up by two bolts
Yes.
that hold a piece that's 600 pounds cantilever off, and those bolts have to be not used just because of safety's sake.
Yeah.
In terms of not hurting anyone, but in terms of having a stress crack in the bolt that is attached to the bottom of the paw of the Tiger. So, but not that much.
Right.
Maybe 5%.
So, okay. So I can imagine using like a lot of things that you weld with, working with hot instruments to put things together.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really fascinating, I have to say.
Yeah, there's a process because I use two kinds of two processes. One is a oxyacetylene torch, which has the tanks, the standard tanks with the hoses, and there's a handle and a flame that comes out. And I use that either to cut the metal or heat the metal to bend it.
Okay.
And then I use an electric welder. It's called a stick welder.
A stick welder.
A stick welder. And it is very simple. It's electric, and the electricity runs from the end of the positive to the negative. And when the electricity gets very close, within a quarter inch of the metal that's there that you want to weld, the spark jumps from one to the other. At 2,000 degrees, it melts away the base metal, and the electrode melts into that space that was there before, and that's what forms the weld.
So where did you learn that? Where did you learn this process? Or was it trial and error?
Well, I had a friend I met in when I went to college who was a Vietnam vet, and he had a big studio, and he became friends. He set me up, and he just said, go for it. And he gave me a few lessons. I did take a course with the Cass High School welding course with a boat welder. The guys who weld ships, he was happened to be there. And so I took one course with that, and it helped my technique. And then about, 15 years ago, I took another gas welding course up in Westchester. Although I don't weld with gas.
Okay.
I only use gas to heat and to cut things.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a really fascinating thing to actually witness. Do you ever teach or anything like that? Do you do any type of instruction?
I haven't done much. I've done a little bit for friends. A little bit.
Yeah.
Just, I'm pretty busy, and maybe I should help the next generation.
Oh, no should, whatever. If you want. It's up to you. There's no should.
I haven't really made the opportunity to do that yet.
Well, I think that you're actually giving back anyway just by creating this beautiful work. Sometimes that's what you're giving, is that in itself. And I think that it would inspire a lot of people. I can imagine that there are a lot of people that wish they could do what you did. But your process, it sounds like, is a process that is evolved and that it's your own.
Yes. And it's also, unlike other art forms, it's a particularly dirty process. I wear a full coverall, a respirator,
right,
a helmet,
right,
fireproof gloves, a fireproof apron.
Romantic.
Yeah. So when I'm in there, it's sort of like your own little world. You really have to be aware of what you're doing.
Right.
So it's a little hard to teach because you're really not. It's hard to talk to someone if you're wearing a respirator.
Yeah, I think
there's a lot of smoke and there's smoke and there's fire and there's sparks.
And and so when you get started you're doing it for the entire day when you're outfitting like that.
Yes. Yeah. You do several hours, at least 3 or 4 hours at a time before you want to stop, because just getting, taking all that stuff off.
Yeah.
It's kind of a chore.
It's almost like you're wearing a little hazmat suit or something.
Yeah. It's kind of like well, you have to protect your lungs.
That's important.
Yeah. And I have a fan that draws the air out through a filter into the, outside. But it's not like painting or something you can have a conversation with someone on.
Yeah.
If you're gonna.
You have to concentrate on it.
And you have to concentrate on it.
Yeah.
And it's a skill, it's a technique of welding, which is not. It's something with practice. Most people can learn, but you have to practice a lot.
Yeah, and I imagine you learned a lot of this at the university as you were studying art.
I learned it at the same time as it was at the university. I didn't ever take any courses at the university for art, just through trial and error and my friends and the little that I learned. So I am self-taught.
It's amazing. You really never know what's going to happen, It's amazing, you start off as a kid, and you're sitting in a motor town, and the next thing you know, you're using the metal to make some kind of gorgeous art. What more could you ask? It's fantastic. It really is.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I know you'll be having more shows. I just know you will. So maybe we can follow up on what's going on with you, because I'm very much fascinated with your work.
Thank you so much.
And I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about it deeply.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
No, it's my honor. It's everybody that comes in here is somebody that I wish I could do what they do, And I'm just totally fascinated with it. I know it takes a lot of artistry, concentration, some know-how, and strength, Beautiful work.
Thank you so much.
You're amazing.
Thank you.
And so where can we see your work online?
Yes, it's www.rspinazzola.com.
Just like it sounds. All right. rspinazzola.com. Yeah, go check it out. You'll see a lot of stuff online of Robert Spinazzola's work. And I know you'll be as awestruck as I was. And I'll thank you again for being on the show. I thank you again for coming to watch this show. And I'll see you next time. Bye.